I started touring in a band around the time I was 15 years old. I was in a bunch of bands, but the first band I really started doing a lot with was a punkish band, Trees. The drummer of Trees was my friend Shane. We used to be in two separate bands that briefly toured together also, but then he joined Trees. And this is where this story starts. After one of the Trees practice sessions, Shane told me he met some guy online named Ryan, who way back then was internet famous. He was older than us and wanted to put together a metal band, or a metalcore or hardcore metal band. So Shane wanted to know if I could play metal. The goal was to gear up for this longer tour that this band that didn't currently exist would go on, that this guy Ryan, who I had never met, would book. So I asked Shane, why would this guy Ryan, the singer, screamer, want us to be in his band and we're not even in the same state? Shane said, he's under house arrest. He stabbed some guy or something and now he has an ankle bracelet so he can't leave his house. We'd have to drive to California, but he would pay for the gas and give us food. At this point in my life, I was so hungry, so desperate to make something happen, I didn't even question it. So I said, I'm in. Shane said he knew this guy Cody from the hardcore scene, and this guy had a truck, and he was also going to be in the band, the other guitar player. We practiced at this guy Cody's house a couple of times to learn the songs, and then the next weekend, the three of us and some other random guy, a friend of Cody's, got into a truck and drove to California for the first time. I didn't really know them at all, so it was like going on a road trip with total strangers, but I knew Shane, our drummer, so we drive the 4.5-5 hours to get to Ryan's house in California. I guess it was his mom's house. We set up all the gear pretty much right away and start practicing. It was the first time we ever heard Ryan scream. He didn't really seem very interested in how the music sounded when we practiced, which caught me by surprise. He seemed more interested in knowing if we could write new songs, probably so we can get out an EP. And honestly, Ryan ended up seeming like a decent guy when we met him. He kept his word, he gave Cody money for gas right away, and he handed us some sandwiches that his mom made. There was water too, but the water had little floating specks in it, so I didn't drink any. He told us a little bit more about why he was under house arrest and how long it had been. And then he told us about this tour he wanted us to go on before we even met each other. The way the timing would have worked out in the future would have been so that he himself couldn't even go because he would still be under house arrest. So he said that somebody would fill in on screaming for him and he would manage the tour from his computer. It was weird. He was very straight edge and obsessed with getting more followers even way back then. He had this whole routine of waking up at a certain time and doing this checklist of stuff in order to maximize his following. And this is way back in the day, way before every 4-year-old in the world wanted to be an influencer. It was the first time I'd ever seen something like that, and it was pretty eye-opening. It seemed like he was making things happen. So we practiced that day until we went to sleep, and then the same thing the next day all day until we had to drive home. At the time, I was also working as a chess teacher for a chess company for elementary school kids, not like a high-level chess player. So luckily, I was able to just do all of my shifts after school every day since there wasn't work on the weekend anyways. So we keep up this whole driving back and forth between the two states for a couple of weeks until one time we got there to California. It was earlier in the day, not at night, and Ryan told us that he wanted to have a party that night, which surprised me, but it turned out the main reason he wanted to do it was because there was another internet famous person that he wanted to invite over. So we said, sure. It sounded like it was another part of his plan to get the band going. And he said that the party would only be a little kickback, maybe 5-10 people max. So we get in the truck to go pick up this person all the way out in Hollywood, which took a long time to get there. Sat in front of the apartment, and eventually this person came out and their name was Jeffrey. So we all said, hey. Jeffrey was sitting next to me, so on the drive back, he showed me some pictures of battered meat or something on his phone. Then he told me, you want to know what happens if some bee comes at me? And as he said that, he opened up his clutch bag and there was nothing in it except for a single meat cleaver. He pinched the handle with his thumb and pointer finger and dragged it out slowly just to show me and then put it away. The other two guys in the car caught a glimpse of it and quickly averted their gazes. So when we finally pull around the last corner and drive up to the house, it is packed. There are probably 200 or 300 people at this place, so many that they obviously can't even fit inside the house. They're scattered all over the front yard and into the street. So we park, muscle our way into the front door and try and find Ryan to bring Jeffrey to him. When we finally get to him, Ryan sees him, rushes up, introduces himself and starts making small talk. So we're all standing in the hallway talking about the new band. when suddenly people start rushing to try and get to the front door to get out of the house. All of us see the commotion and try and get outside too to see what's happening. In the middle of the street, there are two guys that are yelling at each other, a guy in a button-up and a guy in a tank top. Ryan explains that one guy is from one gang and the other is from another. The tank top guy starts walking up to the button-up guy and squares up like he's ready to take the fight. The button-up guy is too, but then he sees the tank top guy's friends are walking up on the sides. As soon as he realizes that, the button-up guy pulls out a knife from his pocket and flicks it open and walks towards them. I didn't realize the car that the tank top guy was standing in front of was his car, so he reached into the car, through the window, and pulled out a gun. You gotta remember that there were probably more than 100 people outside as this was going down. So as soon as somebody started screaming, "He has a gun!" everyone started bolting in different directions. Some back into the house, some get in their cars and leave, some jump into the backyard. We are all behind this truck, so we drop into the bed of the truck. When I look back up, the button-up guy is gone, but the tank top guy and his friends are out there laughing. No shots were fired. The party resumes, we go back in the house, and Ryan is pissed that this happened at his house during his house arrest. He starts naming off all the people that disrespected his home, and another hour or so goes by. We're talking in the hallway, and the same thing happens again. People start rushing outside again. This time when we get out there, Ryan's nowhere to be found, and it's two guys straight up fist fighting, and it looks like it's about to turn into a brawl. It turns out that Ryan got up on top of the roof of his house and started throwing something down at the people fighting as he was screaming at them to leave. I heard somebody say, "He's throwing knives!" So as soon as I saw that there was a knife on the ground, I immediately tried to get back inside so I wouldn't accidentally get hit by something. So after this second fight, almost everyone left. I didn't see how it ended, but I kept hearing about how someone was throwing knives from the roof. There was some more screaming outside, but eventually it was all quiet. We were finally down to the 5 to 10 people that this kickback was supposed to be originally. It was a lot easier to see how trashed the house was now that there were so few people there. All of us were sitting in the bedroom. I was in one section with Jeffrey, Ryan was at the computer facing everyone. There was a girl that was sitting in the bed, Shane across from me, and a few other random people. It was calm, and everyone was just talking. Until a guy burst in the room, swung the door open, and started screaming at the girl in the bed, saying, "Look, we need to go now. They are coming back. We need to go now." It turns out that guy was the girl's boyfriend, but before she could respond, Jeffrey told him, "Maybe she doesn't want to go with someone who looks like a troll doll." A bunch of the random people started cracking up laughing at this, including the girl herself. So the guy said, "Fine, you're all just gonna die here then." And before he even finished that sentence, he was sprinting out towards the front door to leave. People went back to talking like nothing ever happened. And a little bit later on, Jeffrey asked me where to get some water. So we walked to the kitchen, which has a big window. At this point, Shane was already there drinking water himself, and he said to Jeffrey, "You might want to look at the water first." Because if you remember, the water at this house was cloudy and had some specks in it. So we held up the glass of water to the light. The three of us leaned in at the same time to look at it, and at that moment, it was like time completely froze. Before I heard any sound, all of the glass of the giant window we were standing in front of exploded. There was a loud The people that were left in the house started screaming. Shane dropped his drinking glass and bolted to one side. Jeffrey ran into the bathroom, and I dropped to the floor onto the glass and tried to crawl into the other room. Then we heard more sounds and more glass shattering. A few of the girls that I didn't know at all were screaming in fear. And then finally, when it was over and everything was quiet, I heard someone sniffling, crying in the other room. Someone else yelled out, "Is everyone okay?" And then somebody else said, "What happened?" In response to that, somebody yelled out, "They came back. It's like that guy said, it was retaliation." I didn't want to stand up right away in case it wasn't over, so I crawled over to where I thought Shane was to see if he was okay, since the three of us were the only ones standing right in front of the window where it happened. But first I saw Jeffrey, and he was more than shaken. He kept repeating, "I have to go, I can't be here, I have to go, I have to go, take me out of here now, I can't be here." The first thing that Ryan heard was that, so he immediately asked us to take Jeffrey home before we even knew if anyone was outside. Nobody argued, we just accepted it and went to the door. I was the first one to open the front door and stick my head out to see if anyone was out there, but all I saw was a bunch of glass on the floor, which didn't make sense to me because the window they hit us from had all the glass come into the house, so how could there be glass outside? Well, it turns out they hit Cody's truck. We opened the doors to hurry up and get inside because we didn't want to be standing out in the open, and all the seats were covered in glass. I was on the passenger side, so I was trying to sweep the glass onto the floor of the car so I could sit on it without having a pile of glass underneath me. That's when we realized we didn't have a windshield anymore. So we jumped in, Cody peeled out of there, and I don't know if you guys have ever driven a car without a windshield before, but it's awful. It feels like you can barely keep your eyes open, and of course we didn't have glasses or anything to block the wind, so we drove slowly in total silence, but we didn't make it very far. We got to the first gas station we saw, pulled over, and tried to sweep all of the glass into a trash can, which also wasn't very effective. This entire time, Jeffrey said nothing, Cody said nothing, but Shane said, "What if they come back and Ryan is alone?" As soon as he said that, pretty much everyone understood what he meant. Everyone was on the same page to go back. So we start slowly driving back, but now there's some sort of fog that makes it a lot harder to see than before, and the street lights were out, which was weird because we were there maybe 15 minutes ago, but the street lights were on, so it was very dark out there. Cody starts getting a little bit paranoid, so he turns off his headlights, and we quietly roll into the spot in front of the house, and as soon as we do that, boom. Floodlights kick on, powerful ones, and we're temporarily blinded for a second. There were at least 2 cop cars sitting in front of us in the darkness that we didn't see, and from behind we hear tires screeching as more cop cars come around the corner and block us in from the back. On a speaker, a cop is screaming at us to get out of the car with our fingers laced behind our heads. So I open the door, fall to my knees next to the truck with my fingers laced behind my head, with some shards of glass following me out the door onto the floor. I try looking in front of me, but it's a blinding light, but I can make out that a cop is walking towards me. I'm still on the ground, on my knees, kneeling in the shards of glass at the side of the truck, and in that moment I remember hoping that this shooting wouldn't make me miss school the next day because I was still in high school. And that's part 1. I'm on my knees in a pile of shattered glass with my hands locked behind my head and my eyes squinting forward trying to see the cop walking towards me. He grabs me under the armpit and jerks me up so I stand so that he can handcuff me. He pulls me over to the curb where there are a few other stragglers from inside the house that are also handcuffed, and I try to tell him, "Hey, this isn't what it—" "You shut up and you sit down, kid." So now I'm on the curb with everyone else, and everywhere I look there are floodlights from cop cars. I look over my shoulder behind me, and in front of the house I see house arrest Ryan trying to smooth talk his way out of the situation with cop number 2. Cop number 2 is not having it, and she looks pissed. Obviously, since they got multiple reports of fighting in the streets, shots fired, and attempted stabbings, all from the same house, Ryan's house. And just to make it abundantly obvious again, he has an ankle bracelet on because he is under house arrest. So I look back in front of me, and Jeffrey is now in the backseat of a cop car. His clutch bag is sitting on top of the trunk of that car, and 2 different cops are standing over the bag wearing gloves. One of them reaches in the bag and fishes around until he finds the only item that's in there, the meat cleaver. He drags it out very slowly from the handle, and when the massive blade becomes visible, both cops look at each other completely and totally bewildered. I look back over my shoulder, and the situation with Ryan has completely 180'd. I have no idea how, but somehow he has the cop laughing, and Ryan is laughing too. I think I'm the only one that notices this because everyone else is handcuffed on the curb with me, and most of them look petrified. One girl on the end of the line is crying and shaking. So we stay out there on the curb for more than an hour before I feel a cop unlocking my handcuffs from behind my back. And when I look behind me, Ryan is standing behind the cop and puts a finger to his mouth with a shh motion. The cop unlocks us all without even saying a single word, and then they all drive away. I ask Ryan, what did you say to make them go?
"Yeah, I worked it out, don't worry about it."
Is everything okay with the house arrest situation?
"Yeah, everything's cool, don't worry about it."
So I did end up missing school the next day because the windows were busted out of Cody's truck and we couldn't drive on the freeway. The next day at Ryan's house when we were cleaning all the debris, Ryan says,
"So y'all ready for this tour or what?"
So if you remember, the entire point of doing this whole back and forth thing was to set up and practice for this tour. Even though I had been in the punk band for a very long time, Ryan's band, the metal band, had never even played a show together. And because Ryan was popular on the internet at the time, he took it upon himself to book the entire tour, which we had never let anyone else book for us back then. And in some weird way, part of the reason why I was fine with Ryan taking over with the booking was because of how he handled the aftermath of the shooting. But it turns out those two things have nothing to do with each other, and we would all deeply regret that decision. So before the tour happened with the punk band and the metal band in the same van, the punk band did a few shows leading up to that. The pre-tour shows started off strong. We booked these shows ourselves, and the very first one was at Jerry's Pizza in Bakersfield. We played a great show with some great, mostly hardcore bands, and there was a lot of people that came to see us. There were plenty of people singing along to our songs, stage dives, high fives, and the best part was being able to eat that pizza. The show ended, so we started driving out into the desert, and we had some van issues outside of an area called Boron, which is sort of in the middle of the desert, but we didn't quite make it there. In the pitch black of night, because there were no lights out there, we had to pull the van over into the dirt, and there was only one building as far as the eye could see that had a light coming out of it. So we started walking towards the house that had the light, and while we were walking there, off in the distance, a wild dog came running out of the desert straight towards us at full speed. So we turned around and bolted back into the van. And right as we slammed the door shut behind us, we realized there was a whole pack of wild dogs. They were all barking and circling our van, so we tried to just wait it out, but they never left. After about an hour, one of the guys just couldn't hold it anymore, so he actually cranked down the front driver's window and tried to pee out the window. But right as he started doing that, one of the wild dogs was running and jumped into the air to bite him. But that's a story for another day. So let's skip ahead and jump right into the whole point that all of this happened for, which was the tour with both bands, the one that House Arrest Ryan booked. The rest of the punk shows leading up to it went pretty great, but right before the full-on tour, Ryan started feeling a little bit weird because he wasn't very communicative and he wasn't answering basic questions like how much money each show would pay and where we were staying at. It was Justin's van, the singer of the punk band, so he just wanted to make sure the shows would at least cover the cost of the tour, but Ryan said, don't worry about it, just trust him. So finally it kicks off with both bands in the same van, and even though we shared a lot of the same members, it was a weird mix. We got to San Diego, slept on the floor, and the show was horrible. It was at a bar, and since I wasn't 21, I just had to stand outside of it until it was time to play. And that part was fine because I did that pretty often, but the show was non-existent. We played a show to basically no one because no one even knew that we were playing in town. And they didn't pay us when Ryan said they were going to, which meant that we all had to pay for the expenses and we really did not have money. So we got nothing. They wouldn't even give me a cup of water. Strike one against Ryan. Google Maps says that it takes 5.5 hours to get to Phoenix, so in Justin's old van, it probably took 2 weeks. Van time is kind of like dog years. On the way to Phoenix, morale in the van is pretty low. Ryan's on the phone and he says that that whole situation in San Diego was a fluke and the next show would be totally fine. So we finally get to the show in Phoenix and the building is permanently closed. And this is where things start to crack. We're standing in an empty parking lot arguing. Ryan won't answer the phone and the argument boils down to whether or not we should go home or keep going. Justin, the singer of the punk band who owns the van, wants to go home, and Cody from the metal band wants to keep going despite a 100% failure rate by Ryan. In the middle of all this, Justin says, nah, I'm done. And Cody sort of quietly says,
I have $11K in the bank. Anything goes wrong, I can handle it.
Justin says, I don't believe you. And Cody says,
I have $11K in the bank. Why would we not go if we have that kind of security?
So Justin says, okay, you tell everyone what you just told me. Say it loud and clear for everyone to hear, or we're gonna turn around. Cody didn't really want to say it loud, so he kind of just whispered,
No, it's fine. I said I'll do it, I swear.
And Justin tells him, then if you're not gonna say it out loud to everybody, we're not gonna go to the next show.
Okay, fine, I'll do it.
So Cody stands up on top of the van where Justin was pointing and tells everyone,
as unbelievable as it may seem, you are looking at someone who has $11K in the bank. I know that's probably more than all of your families combined, but my family isn't poor like yours.
Justin says, okay, so what happens if the van breaks down?
I'll pay for it.
Okay, and what if we get stuck?
I said I'll pay for it.
So after that, Justin threw his hands up and just said, okay, let's go. So we drive another 7 hours through the desert to Albuquerque, slept in the van, and the next day, the morning of the show, we went to a mall and started asking random people if we could stay with them. Eventually, this random girl who worked at Hot Topic said yes, so after the show, the plan was to meet up with her and stay at her place. On the way out of there, we saw a bakery type place and saw that they were about to throw a ton of bread into the trash. So we asked them if we could have the bread instead of them just throwing it away. They said no, and then we watched them throw it into the trash and pour bleach on the bread. I guess the idea being that we wouldn't go through the trash later on and try to eat it. 11K Cody and Mike, his random friend that he brought along, were off somewhere else, and we wouldn't find out until much later on that they were actually just living it up, eating at restaurants. Meanwhile, the rest of us had a very different approach. At a certain point, this happened pretty often. When we would get hungry enough, what we would do is walk into a restaurant and just find a table where someone had left, but it hadn't been cleaned up yet. Then we would just sit down at that table and eat all of the food they left behind. It is pretty amazing how much food people just leave on the table when they're done eating in a restaurant. I know it sounds really gross, but after a certain point, you get so hungry that it's better than the alternative. And all you really had to do was cut off the parts where they actually bit it. So we did one of these leftover runs, ate some food that was left behind, and then it was time for the fateful night of the show. We get there, and this is actually the first show that Ryan booked that is actually sort of a show. The way this spot was laid out was upstairs was a record shop, and downstairs was the venue. It was all doom metal and black metal themed, which neither of the bands were. And I guess on the off days when they didn't have shows there, they actually held some sort of church congregation there. So we played the show, both bands, and there was a few people that knew the songs, so it was better than the previous two nights, but again, we didn't get paid. Ryan had his excuses, but at the end of the day, we made nothing, which we were really hoping we would get because we needed to pay for gas and a bunch of other expenses. And you have to remember that every tour leading up to this one with the punk band was at least successful enough to break even, and this one was totally negative because in most places, they didn't even know we were coming due to the way that Ryan set it up. After the show, we went back to that Hot Topic girl's apartment, met her boyfriend and their roommate who was weirdly thirsty for her right in front of her boyfriend. She was really excited to tell us all of her strategies about how she steals things at different places without getting caught, and then she was showing us random artifacts around her apartment saying, "Yep, I stole this too, and I stole this, and I stole this from here, and I stole this from there." In the middle of her explaining her mastermind stealing strategies, 11K Cody asked her how much he pays for rent for her apartment, and when she told him how much he paid, he said,
I could pay your rent 18 times over. I could basically own your apartment. I have 11K in the bank. 11K. That's probably more than you've seen your entire life, even if you count all this stuff you stole.
Anyway, then the people we were staying with kept interviewing him about how we got 11K and what does it feel like to have 11K, while the rest of us were eating literal trash on the floor, and the only thing she had in her fridge was a bottle of mustard, so we just applied mustard to anything we had. I tried watching The Prestige, but I fell asleep on the floor pretty fast. The next morning, we found out that someone stole our hitch pin from the van. It's the thing that connects the van to the trailer, and that thing cost maybe $5 at the time. So Justin said, "All right, Cody, you said you'd cover this."
I said if it broke. It's not broken, it's stolen.
"It's $5, and you said that you'd pay."
You guys are so poor you can't pay $5. It's not broken.
So he never paid for it, and as soon as we were trying to leave, something went wrong with the van. Bad. We couldn't tell exactly what was wrong, but we knew that we had to turn around and start trying to head back. By the time we were pretty far out into the desert, something happened again. The van suddenly was now stuck driving 10 miles an hour on the freeway. And that might not sound like that big of a deal, but man, it is nerve-wracking when you are stuck on a trucking freeway where everyone else is going over 80 miles an hour and not paying attention to a broken down van in the slow lane going 10 miles an hour. So the first time we thought we were gonna die was when a full-on cargo semi-truck coming up from behind us clearly did not even notice we were there. So it didn't slow down. A bunch of the guys started screaming thinking we were about to die, and Justin threw his arms as hard as he could onto the steering wheel to throw us off the side of the freeway into a ditch. The semi-truck never even for a second slowed down, and within a fraction of a second of getting out of the lane, it zoomed past us at full speed. The gravity and speed of the semi-truck shook the van because of how close it was to us and broke off our side view mirror. So we sat there in the ditch completely in silence, completely in darkness, No one said a single word. One of the guys looked like he was about to have a full-on panic attack, and still, no one says anything. None of us had food, we were almost out of water, it was completely pitch black outside other than the headlights of oncoming cars on the freeway, and those of us that had cell phones didn't have service. At this point in time, I didn't own a cell phone myself. When Justin eventually turned the van out of the ditch to get back on the freeway, this song came on, and we all just sat in silence and listened to it. We drove for another 6 hours like this, where at least 10 more times we'd have to turn off the side of the road at the last minute right before a semi-truck would hit us from behind. It was like thinking you were gonna die over and over again, but we had to get out of there. Besides the water situation and everything else, we knew that in the next town, which was Flagstaff, there would be a way that the van could get repaired because there were repair shops in Flagstaff. When tensions were at their highest, Justin asked Cody if he was going to keep up his end of the bargain and fix the van when we got to Flagstaff, and surprisingly, he didn't put up a fight. Someone else asked, what if it takes your entire 11K? And Cody said,
If that's what it takes.
so we roll into Flagstaff at 4 a.m., pull over into a parking lot, and try to figure out what to do. Pretty much everybody gets out of the van to try and walk around because we've been in that van for probably over 12 hours at this point, and it's cramped. Then while everybody is making small talk, I notice that Mike and Cody are gone. Shane calls Cody since he's the only one that has his number, and in case it's still not clear, we are two separate bands that don't really know each other besides the overlapping members. And Shane tells us, they left. We couldn't even fathom what Shane just said. Somehow we automatically knew it wasn't a joke, but still couldn't process that idea. The guy who promised to spend his 11K to save us if anything went wrong ran away and abandoned us, left us stranded with no money, no water, no food, in a place that we wouldn't even be in the first place if he didn't push us so hard and guarantee us that he would take care of any situation that came up with the van. It would have hurt if any one of us bailed, but he was supposed to get us home. But instead, he just left. He just ran away. Justin turned to Shane and said, call him back right now. Cody picks up, not realizing that Justin is using Shane's phone, and says, where are you right now?
I'm at a bus station.
What do you mean you're at a bus station?
I took a taxi here and we're going home.
In this moment, Justin almost blacked out from pure rage. Veins popped out of his neck, and he started screaming things into the phone that would put him on an FBI watch list that I can't repeat in this video.
You're a coward, you abandoned us, you left us here. You better hope I never see you again.
He kept screaming into the phone, threatening that he better not ever see Cody for the rest of his life. He was holding the phone in one hand, not by his ear, looking straight down at it and just screaming. I don't know if Cody said anything else or not, but Justin slammed the phone shut and gave it back to Shane. We were left with no other options, shivering in the icy box of a van with nothing, not even a glimmer of hope of how we would get home. And we would have to end up doing things that we weren't proud of just to get by. But it turns out that Justin was wrong about us never seeing Cody again. But that's a story for part 4. Stranded, freezing, hungry. We had to make it through the night outside because unlike every night before, we didn't have someone's floor to sleep on. So we huddled together to stay warm, tried not to breathe in each other's smell, and waited until morning. The next day, we started trying to figure out what to do as soon as we got up. Justin and a few of the other guys were still obviously furious about the whole situation. And while we were talking about that, that's when it dawned on us that Cody left his 5150 because I guess he didn't want to take it with him on the bus. So we decided to sell that amp and use the money to get back home. But right when we were unloading that very heavy amp to sell it, Shane came out and told us not to do it. There was a long debate that went back and forth that basically had these two arguments. We wouldn't be there in the first place if Cody didn't force us forward, and on the other side of things, if we do sell it, it's going to create a chain of violence and retaliation. And then we'll retaliate back and he'll retaliate back worse, and so on and so on. During this debate, I started getting that shaky feeling you get when you've been hungry for too many days in a row, and while they were still going back and forth, a random guy came out of a pizza shop that I didn't even know was there. He handed me a box of pizza and just said, hey, we burnt this, so we're gonna throw it out anyway. You want it? And I know it doesn't seem like that big of a deal from wherever you're watching this, but at the time, my brain could not fathom this infinite gesture of mercy. Or at least that's what it felt like it was, like some sort of cosmic intervention conversation that might have meant nothing to that guy at all, but meant everything to us. So we all devoured this burnt pizza that tasted incredible. And by the time we finished eating, we decided to go with Shane's solution, which was to not sell the amp, but instead he was going to try to call his dad to see if somehow he would be able to come get us. And about 12 hours later, that was how we got home. So we get back home, and in retrospect, the whole tour felt like a complete failure, especially when you consider all the tours before this one were so much better. So we agreed to never trust Ryan to book us on any tour ever again. But all that didn't matter at this moment because, again, I'm still in high school at this point. So I go to school, I go to work, and after work, I head over to Shane's house because that's where the final confrontation is supposed to happen. Cody shows up, walks into the garage to talk to Shane so we can get his amp, but Justin is waiting there in the darkness, and very quietly he comes up behind him with a guitar cord. Shane started screaming, scrambling to get out from behind the drum set to get over to Justin to stop him, and while Cody was gasping for air, Justin purposely sneezed into his mouth as some sort of ultimate payback.
Where's your 11K now, Cody?
Cody's body slumped to the ground and Shane shoved Justin away towards the 5150, and I'm standing in the corner shocked. Shane is trying to see if Cody's okay, but when I look back over at Justin, he picked up the 5150, holding it above his head, about to slam it down onto Cody's limp body. And all of that was what I was thinking was going to happen, but then we park. When we walk into the garage, Justin's sitting in the darkness, Shane is behind the drum set, and I ask, "Where's Cody?" Shane tells me, well, he showed up earlier to grab his stuff, and no, he didn't give us any money. I asked him to stay so he could talk with everyone about what happened and the 11K, but he just chickened out and ran away. So we all just accepted that that was the reality, sat down and started planning the next tour, which ended up being an even more wild experience than this one, but also very, very different. And pretty much everyone in this story you'll see in other stories, but if you're wondering where they are now, these two ended up making a really successful company. Jim became an engineer. Jeffrey went on to make music, then YouTube, and then became very rich doing other things. Ryan became a popular Instagrammer. Cody went to prison for life. I'm kidding, I have no idea. Justin ended up being one of the very first super successful Twitch streamers. The last time anyone heard from him, he was saying something about Mount Fuji and then grabbed his Pikachu 3DS and just disappeared. And as for me, I ended up making more music and more videos, a lot of which are linked down below in the description. If you want to see another one of my stories, let me know by subscribing. You can check out Easy Mode Music at easymode.com or just go to the link in the description, which will take you to the Spotify or the YouTube channel. And if you haven't subscribed to the second channel yet, it's also down below. It's a podcast, and recently we just hit 1 million subscribers. But for those of you that have stuck around on this video to the very end, I have a little bonus for you. This is a very, very old song that has a music video that features some familiar characters. So I'll see you guys in the next one. Enjoy.